Alors, bienvenue tout le monde à notre...
Welcome, everyone, to our committee.
18, vote 1B, 5B, 10B under Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food. And on that, I'd like to certainly welcome the Minister of Agriculture, Mr. McCauley, welcome with us today, and also Monsieur Pierre Corriveau et Monsieur Chris Forbes. Alors, la première heure, on va la passer avec le...
So we'll spend the first hour with the Minister, and then we will continue with Mr. Forbes and Corriveau.
As you recall, the members that were here last, not the last meeting, the meeting previous, we had an incident with the sound with the translator. So just to caution people not to put their BlackBerry or the earpiece too close to the mic, because it makes a great noise, and the people in the booth, you know, it's not a pleasant experience. So just to caution you, alors si vous voulez faire l'effort de penser à ça avant de...
Please make an effort to think about that. Be careful with your hearing devices.
I want to welcome Mr. McCauley, Kelly McCauley, in replacement of, I'm not sure if it's Luc or Luke, and Mr. Ziad Aboul Taif in replacement for Mr. Barlow. Et Madame Boucher, on vous souhaite la bienvenue de nouveau. Alors,
I wish you welcome again.
To welcome my chair of the Fisheries and Ocean Committee. So we kind of switched places today. So welcome Mr. Scott Sims in replacement of Pierre Breton. So with that, we'll get underway, and Mr. Minister will give you your opening remarks. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Bonjour tout le monde. I'm pleased to be back at the committee today. I'm joined by Deputy Minister Chris Forbes and Pierre Corriveau, Assistant Deputy Minister, Corporate Management Branch. I want to thank the committee for its outstanding work in support of the Canadian agricultural sector. You have been tackling some very important issues for Canadian farmers, including a food policy for Canada, non-tariff barriers, climate change, water and soil conservation issues. My message to you today is the government will continue to work with you to grow Canada's agriculture and food sector. Today I'd like to touch on three key points: our progress since we met last, our priorities ahead, and challenges and opportunities. Mr. Chair, Canada's agriculture and agri-food industry continues to grow. Last year, the industry generated over $111 billion of our GDP. The sector's not stopping there, and neither are we. The estimates you have before you show that the government increased investment of $23 million for programs to support competitiveness, market development, and innovation. That brings our total allocation for the department to $2.4 billion. As you know, Growing Forward 2 is ending on March the 31st. We are now working with the provinces and territories on a new Canadian agricultural partnership. Beginning on April the 1st, 2018, the Canadian Agricultural Partnership will drive investments of $3 billion over 5 years. This agreement will build on the future of our great industry. It will support the growth and potential of the Canadian agriculture and food sector. It would help farmers innovate, grow, and prosper. Last week at Agribition in Regina, I announced the federal programs under the partnership. Backed by the federal investment of over $1 billion, these programs will help farmers and processors expand into new markets, be more efficient and environmentally sustainable through agricultural research and technology, and build better consumer confidence. Trade continues to be a strong focus for our government. We aim at increasing our agricultural exports to $75 billion by 2025. Trade with China will help us get there. This is a vital market for our farmers. China is the second largest trading partner in agri-food. Their middle class grows by the population of Canada every year. I was in China 2 weeks ago with a delegation of over 100 strong. I can tell you, Mr. Chair, these Chinese consumers are looking for the safety and top quality that our farmers can deliver. More and more, they're buying groceries on their smartphones and tablets. I have to say, we had a very successful trip. Industry signed deals of new business of nearly $300 million. From wild blueberries, barley, swine genetics, and ice wine. We promoted e-commerce to sell our great Canadian food and beverages. And I sat down with our counterparts, the Minister Hahn and the Minister Zhu of AQSIQ, to explore the further ways to develop our trade. We also signed an agreement to collaborate on biotechnology. We were also in Europe in October to help our industry maximize their opportunities under CETA. The historic and progressive agreement will help boost agricultural exports to Europe by approximately $1.5 billion a year. There is still much more work to be done, and that is why our mission to Europe was so important. We helped open doors for exporters and made many great connections with European importers. We also held bilateral meetings with many senior EU officials. We want to maximize the opportunities that CETA provides for our farmers. Here at home, we continue to support a strong and modernized NAFTA. Over the past few months, I have met with many government industry people from the U.S. and Mexico. I can tell you that everyone I've spoken to recognizes the benefit that NAFTA has brought to our country, to our industry, our farmers, and our economies in the three countries. Canada will continue to work hard to grow our trading partnership across North America, and we will continue to defend our supply management system and our dairy, poultry, and egg farmers. We're also investing $350 million in programs to build our dairy farmers and to make sure our dairy farmers and processors stay on the cutting edge through new technologies. To ensure our products get to the consumers around the world, we're also strengthening our grain transportation system through measures in Bill C-49, the Transportation Modernization Act. Just yesterday, we announced that Canada successfully restored market access for Canadian pork exports to Argentina, effective immediately. This could put another $16 million a year into the pockets of our farmers. I want to say, Mr. Chair, that we're deeply concerned and disappointed with the recent regulatory and tariff decisions made by the Government of India affecting Canadian pulse trade. We have been working together with our farmers to find a mutually acceptable way forward with the Government of India to provide a stable, sustainable access for Canadian pulse exports to India. I raised these issues with my counterparts in India, and recently the Minister of Trade held a mission to India where the recent increase of tariffs on pea imports were raised at every opportunity. Canada and the rest of the world have been hit with a 50% tariff on peas, and this was a decision that India made without any advance notice. We stand ready to work constructively with the Government of India and our pulse farmers to resolve these issues, helping to ensure India's long-term food security. Mr. Chair, I would now like to take a brief look at our priorities over the coming months. On the Canadian Agricultural Partners, or CAP, we continue to work closely with our provincial and territorial partners to finalize the bilateral agreements. Our government is committed to supporting our farmers with strategic investments that expand growth and create well-paying middle-class jobs. As I mentioned last Friday, I announced the federal-only investment of $1 billion under CAP. These investments will focus on key priorities: growing trade and expanding markets, the innovative and sustainable growth of the sector, and supporting the sector by better reflecting diversity and enhancing public trust. This is an exciting new chapter in Canadian agriculture, and the Canadian Agricultural Partnership will help ensure farmers and food processors can meet the world's growing demand for our high-quality products. My Deputy Minister will be pleased to provide the committee with further updates on the Canadian Agricultural Partnership during the second half of this meeting. Governments fully realize that we must continue to make sure that our business risk management programs respond to farmers' needs. Along with my colleagues from the provinces and territories, we have made changes to strengthen these programs. We also announced a comprehensive review of the BRM programs in partnership with our Canadian farmers. Innovation is certainly a priority for the Canadian Agricultural Partnership. It will give our farmers a competitive edge on the world stage. We will continue the great work of our agricultural clusters under the Canadian Agricultural Partnership. We will collaborate with the provinces, with the private sector to help the industry grow and help feed the world. Our government has identified the agri-food sector as one of 6 industries that can make Canada a global leader in innovation, and that is exactly what we intend to do. Action on the environment is key to keeping the sector meeting the global demands for food sustainably. Our government is investing in programs to help farmers adapt to climate change. We have invested $27 million in the Agricultural Greenhouse Gas Program, which will help ensure our farmers are the world leaders in the use and development of clean and sustainable technology and processes. We have invested $70 million in the agricultural science through Budget 2017, which will focus on addressing emerging priorities such as climate change, water, and soil conservation. We are encouraging industry across the country to take a national approach to environmental farm plans. These have been tremendously successful, and they have a great potential to build the Canadian brand in global markets. We look forward to placing an increased focus on environmental sustainability under CAP. I know that your committee is undertaking a study on some of these issues, and I certainly look forward to the results of these studies and how you can inform the government on these issues going forward. We're continuing to work towards a food policy for Canada based on our consultations, which reach tens of thousands of Canadians and industry stakeholders across the country. This policy will be our shared vision for the future of food in Canada. I look forward to the results of your recent study on the food policy. Mr. Chair, there will always be challenges in agriculture, whether it's tough competition on the global stage, protectionism, or changing consumer demands. At the same time, Canada has the competitive advantage that will help turn these challenges into opportunities. We are blessed with huge resources of farmland and water and the best farmers and ranchers in the world. Mr. Chair, the time is right for the Canadian agriculture and food industry to increase its presence on the global stage. Through smart investments and continued collaboration, I'm confident that we're up to any challenge that lies ahead. Thank you for the great work. Merci.
Thank you very much, Minister McCauley. Now, on va continuer la conversation avec le ministre.
Continue the conversation, turning to the question period. Mr. McKelly, 6 minutes.
Always great to see another McCauley. Congratulations on your name. With the estimates, this is something I've brought up in the OGO committee a couple of times. I never got a straight answer, so I'm glad to be here. There's $1 million and almost $3 million this year to send foreigners to foreign agricultural conferences. Can you explain why we're doing that? No, I'd like to hear from the minister why we're using taxpayers' money to send foreigners to foreign agricultural conferences.
Well, it is not a new venture,
Okay.
I can assure you.
Could you explain to us why?
But I'll let Pierre respond.
Mr. Chair, so it's a program that's been in place in the department. In fact, we're funding international organizations, so most of this funding would go like to organizations like the FAO, WHO.
What is the purpose of it?
A number of studies, and I know there's a question in the department that we're about to answer back on this, but for example, I'll give you an example on the Global Diversity Information Facility. It's basically to encourage various countries to share their biodiversity data. And to become a full member.
The Treasury Board president told us it was because of food security.
There's also, for example, we're doing a study that we're sharing with the FAO on vet drug residues level across the world.
sorry?
On veterinary, I'm not a specialist and technical specialist, but in terms of funding, this primarily funds research or support the industry. Like there's no, like we're not.
So we send foreign veterinarians to foreign conferences?
No.
Because that's what the estimates say.
We're sending funding
foreigners.
to international organizations.
I'm sorry?
We're sending funding to international organizations like the FAO.
grants to foreign recipients for participation in international organizations supporting agriculture. Minister Bryson said it was to send them to foreign conferences. Is he incorrect?
I think we're about to prepare an answer on this, but like the
I'd like
the
an
fact.
answer now, please.
Well, the answer I can give you right now, the recipient are not individual, but they're international organization.
We continually work and collaborate with international organizations, have and will continue to do more.
Do you believe
because
$3
it
million
makes-
of taxpayers' money, this is a worthwhile use of taxpayers' money to send foreigners to foreign conferences?
We work together with foreign
It's a
countries
yes
in
or
order.
no question, Minister. Is it good
If
value
you're
for
going
taxpayers'
to,
money?
you're a good Macaulay, but when you ask the question, you let somebody answer the question. Generally,
But I
that's
asked a
the
yes
way
or
it
no
works.
question. I asked, do you believe it's good use of taxpayers' money?
Yes, I do. I believe collaboration with other countries is very important. What we need to
a
do
short
is
while ago-
what we need to do is make sure that we continually collaborate with other countries, and also
Shouldn't other
aid
countries
other
fund that
countries
money,
in order
though?
to make sure we can work
Okay.
with them.
Do
That's
foreign
what we have
countries
done, and
send
that's what
us-
we will
okay.
continue to
Do foreign
do.
countries send us money to send Canadians to Canadian conferences?
Not in the
answer is no.
agricultural sector.
Let me
I
ask you a
don't-
question. Recently, your government cut funding to initiative to improve autism services. It was about $4 million a year. Do you think this is better use of taxpayers' money to send foreigners to foreign conferences rather than funding autism services? Is that a better use
Well,
of
I
taxpayers'
don't
money?
want to be, I don't know if we're distant related or not, but the fact is, autism is really not in my,
No, but
in my
the question is
jurisdiction.
about the
What
value
I'm
of the
trying to
$3
tell you
million.
is, with some difficulty, is that what we do is work with other countries in order to make sure we collaborate with other countries, and we do help other countries, and we do help students in other countries, which is not inappropriate.
Which students are we sending from what countries? You know, FAST is actually November 17th, 2016, so over a year ago. We still haven't got an answer back from the government. Which students from what countries are we sending?
We will be sure you receive the answer.
Will you get back to us faster than the Treasury Board? Because we're just all waiting for the Treasury Board.
I'll make sure you receive an answer to your question.
So you were
It's
telling us
somewhat
on the record
detailed.
you believe this is good use of taxpayers'
I believe
money.
it's very
But your
important that
government said that $4 million for autism was not a good use of taxpayers' money. We actually heard that in the House, comms during the debate, but you're saying $3 million for taxpayers' money to send foreigners to foreign conferences is good use of taxpayers' money. Just wanna
My
get that on
good
the
friend,
record
if
here.
you're trying to indicate that I do not have a feeling
No,
for
I didn't say
autism,
that.
I would be
I said
very
your government.
disappointed in your
I didn't say
questioning.
you, I said
The
your
fact of the
government.
matter is, I'm here to respond to agricultural estimates and not on autism. I certainly have a great
time do I
feeling
have,
and a
sir?
concern for anybody that has any health issues. But if you're going to start bringing autism and other health issues
It's about
into
use of
this.
taxpayers' money, Minister.
No, you brought up the autism, my good friend.
Yeah.
You brought up the
go on
autism,
to
and it's
now.
only fair that I say to you quite clearly that I do have a feeling for autism. I do have a feeling for people that have less. I do have a feeling that people are hurt. But I'm the Minister of Agriculture, and that's my responsibility.
So I appreciate your answer that you say that $3 million is good use of taxpayers' money. That's fine. I want to follow up something from about a year ago when trying to cut off our canola sales because of the dockage, and we came up with an agreement. It was a compromise for a research and science-based and stable solution. Can you update us where we are with that compromise or with that research?
Yes.
Are we at a steady state with this, that we're not going to fall into having our canola blocked again? Are we comfortable with that?
Well, of course, being here for a number of years, I'm fully aware that these deals have been ongoing for
know.
periods of time.
Well, it's a long preceding a lot of us. I'm just wondering if you could update us where we are with that.
Well, I would like to. The fact is, we have a deal to 2020.
Yeah. I'm asking about the science-based and stable solution research as part
At
of
the
the
present
compromise.
dockage of 2.1,
2.6 billion.
2.1%, yes. We have an agreement with
No, we have an
China.
agreement, but part of the
Thank you,
compromise
Mr. Macaulay,
was for
the
research
MP.
into it. I'd like an update on the research. Maybe you
Oh,
can give
if
me
you
a-
want
Thank
to
you.
talk about research,
Thank
we
you, Mr.
have,
Macaulay.
we're trying to restore the research that your previous government took from the government, and we did put $100 million in the last couple of years. What we're trying to
back
do
to us
over a
where the
period of time
research
is
is.
restore the research budget and science budget. It's not easy when it's totally devastated by a previous government, but but we are working hard on it, and we will succeed.
Perfect.
Thank you, Minister Macaulay. And now we'll go to Monsieur Drouin pour 6 minutes.
Mr. Drouin, 6 minutes.
As long as with his department for appearing before the committee. And maybe for informational purposes, Mr. Macaulay would like to know that Canada Food Grains Bank is a great organization which the government plays a role with as well. And all he has to do is just drive a little bit outside of Edmonton, and he'll see that his farmers are very supportive of that organization. They do great work in Nicaragua and in Ethiopia. I'm hoping that he's not suggesting that these governments fund the government of Canada. I'm hoping that that's not the suggestion that he's making. But back to back to the minister. In your opening remarks, you've made some statements with regards to the dairy program, and I have many dairy farmers who I get the opportunity to represent and the privilege to represent. And I was hoping that I know a few months ago you announced that there would be $250 million to help dairy farmers transition, and another $100 million to help cheesemakers transition as well and upgrade their facility. I was hoping you could provide this committee an update on where we're at with that particular dairy program.
Thank you very much. Number one, being a dairy farmer all my life before I came here, it was certainly a pleasure for me to be able to introduce such a program. As you're well aware, it was done in consultation with the dairy farmers across Canada. Was it enough money? Likely not. It's always hard to provide enough money. But the fact is, it's $250 million, as you indicated, to make sure that the dairy farmers are on the cutting edge. That process, we have received applications, and I believe we're just in the process of sending out some checks. It's the department that handles that, of course, but we're in the process of doing that. But that is the first phase. There will be another phase.
So farmers can expect news anytime this week and next week and the following weeks, and just in time for Christmas?
Being a farmer, this is not a Christmas deal. It's a big deal. Yeah. And I understand fully. It will go on. It's somewhat technical, but it will go on. As the applications are approved, the funding will eventually go out. What's approved for the first round, and then there will be another round. The deputy might like to expand on that.
We would expect applications are being assessed right now, and as applications are assessed, letters will be sent out to those whose applications are accepted, and we expect that to continue for a number of weeks, at least into the new year, probably. And then, as the minister says, the next phase would be launched sometime in the coming months with a new round of applications.
That's
but
great.
Of course, the $100 million for the processing sector is vitally important too, because we just opened markets of 500 million people in Europe with CETA, and it provides a great opportunity for the agricultural sector. Probably not for cheese, there's import of cheese, as you know, but what this will do is make sure that our processors are on the cutting edge too, and they must be. And it takes a lot of money to do that.
That's great. Thank you. Another issue that's been brewing, and obviously I have, I've mentioned I have a lot of dairy farmers. I also have a lot of chicken farmers, egg farmers, and obviously they're all under the supply management system. And as we are negotiating with the U.S. and NAFTA, I was hoping that you could tell this committee the position of the government on supply management, because I'm not too sure about the official opposition's position on that. We know the member from Beauce, the member from Parry Sound Muskoka voted to get rid of supply management, and in fact 50% of their members almost voted to get rid of supply management. So I was hoping that you could tell this committee, so you can enlighten me on the position of the government for supply management.
Well, as I said, and the Prime Minister said, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Minister of Trade has indicated quite clearly, we fully support the supply management system. Ever since I came here, there's always somebody eating at the supply management system. It's one of the most, it's a system that's a model for the world. It works efficiently. The farmers provide top quality food at a reasonable price. And we must make sure that that continues, and we will.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got about a minute left.
Some, yeah, can change.
So in the last budget, we announced that we were going to, by 2024, we were going to get to $75 billion. And I was hoping that perhaps you could talk to us about, I know you were in China not too long ago. Perhaps you could give us an update on your discussions in China and perhaps other markets where you've been talking, and whether or not you've been discussing with those who will produce all the food to get to $75 billion, and provide an update to this committee.
Well, it was certainly an interesting trip. We had about 100, just under 100 industry people traveling with me. They signed over about $300 million worth of deals, but the potential is much bigger than that. And of course, it's very big on all the agricultural sectors, but beef and pork, but we need to make sure that we need to produce more pork and more beef in order to make sure we can fulfill those markets too. But what you have to be is there. But canola too. They're big on canola. Example, canola oil. It's so healthy and efficient. It's so important that we promote that. But there's only one way you can do it, is make sure the nation is there, the industry is there, and it's well represented there. In my view, with the Chinese, you have to sit down, look at them eye to eye, and tell them what you have. They'll tell you what they want and what they expect. They have an emerging middle class. They expect top quality, safe food, and we can provide it. But that's why we have to be very careful of our regulatory process, make sure it's efficient, make sure it's science-based, and we will do that.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Merci, Monsieur Drouin. Et maintenant, Madame Brosseau pour 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. It's always a pleasure to see you, Minister, at committee. I haven't had the chance to ask you questions lately in the House of Commons, but I'm really happy to be able to ask you some questions, specifically on supply management, to kind of follow up on Mr. Drouin's comments. Farmers are concerned. They're concerned about the health of supply management when we're signing all these trade deals that give more and more access. And you will remember the Auditor General's report that talked about a lot of product coming in, about $131 million worth of chicken, turkey, beef, eggs, and dairy products are being imported without appropriate permits. So, you know, people and farmers are really, really concerned. And I'm happy Mr. Drouin brought up the Dairy Farm Investment Program, because, you know, you admitted that you had consulted, you were in talks with the dairy industry in provinces about what this program should look like. And you said clearly that this $250 million is probably not enough money. It's likely not enough money. So in the budget, will you be promising more money for this program? And I was wondering if we could find out the total number of applicants received from producers, broken down by province and territory. If you don't have that information, we'll have it sent to committee if possible, please.
Just repeat that last thing you said.
We want to know for the program, the Dairy Investment Program, how many applications were received from producers, broken down by province and territory.
I would have to get that information for you.
You'll send that to committee?
But I just want to be sure that it didn't indicate that the program itself was flawed, because the $350 million was put together in consultation with the farmers, processors, and
everybody's happy
generally
with the
in government,
and all of
money is short. Money seems to be, in time, are two things that seem to be short in government. That's what I meant. But this program was something that was put together that way, and I think you know that. And also, I appreciate your concern, your genuine concern for supply management.
Have to be a strong voice for farmers, especially when they are getting significant losses because of these trade deals and the government not protecting the border. Can you tell us what the total amount of money has been allocated to Quebec producers also, please?
That's information that each province, it's allocated by quota.
Yes.
That's how it's allocated.
Can you tell us what date it'll open again, the program? Because it's a 5-year program.
No, I cannot tell you that. It's the process, that date has not been established yet.
We haven't figured out an exact relaunch date, but we think in the next couple of months. So sometime in the new year would be the second phase.
How many applications were received so far?
Over 2,500 for the first round, and I don't have a by province breakdown.
Minister, can you confirm there'll be more funding for this program?
Well, the $250 million will be spent through
Will
the dairy farmers.
Will there be
And the
more?
$100 million will be spent in the processing sector,
Will there be more money?
not through
injected?
this program.
Okay.
But I'd like to respond to what you had to say about the border. And for an example, when we formed government, there was more spent fowl coming into this country from the U.S. than there was spent fowl in the U.S.
Yeah.
And I know that Ms. Barrasso is fully aware of that. And we have curbed that some, but not totally. We're continually working on that, trying to make
Perfect.
sure we have
So-
a plan in place to make sure that what comes in, that we can identify what it is.
You've been in government for 2 years.
That's right.
Exactly. Where are
And
you
we
at
have,
with?
and we
where-
have made some progress.
Thank you. Okay, where are you at on the DNA testing?
Well, what has to happen is something that's efficient at the border.
Yeah.
And it has not been established whether DNA can be used, because you cannot have a shipment at the border and then send something to the lab and then have it come back. But what the experts are working to make sure we have a efficient, fast identification process at the border. It's not established yet, but it will be.
Will your government commit to supporting financially the review of maintenance of the Canadian organic standards? Because we're at a disadvantage compared to our other trade
We
union
have
countries.
supported organic agriculture to we have how many million? I think it's over $15 million that we have already allocated to the organic farmers, and I have met with them. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, the regulations, and we're working with the organic farmers on that issue. It has not been resolved yet.
We're talking about the standards.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So,
And organic farming is a very important percentage of the agricultural sector and growing.
so we have these trade deals, and what a big issue is across, I think, Canada, and I know specifically my riding, is labor shortages. There have been many reports and studies. There was a report by the Agricultural Humane Resource Council that was supported by the Conference Board of Canada. And this report identified that 26,400 jobs were unfilled in Canada's agriculture sector in 2014, costing $1.5 billion in lost revenues, or 2.7% of product sales. What is your government going to do to fix the situation?
Well, as you're probably aware, we have a stakeholder review to modernize the administration of temporary foreign workers, which is very important, certainly in my area of the country and across the country. But also, we want to go beyond the temporary foreign worker. We want to make sure that program becomes more efficient, but we want to make sure we put people on the process for landed immigrant status and eventually they become citizens. That's what the process we want to put in place.
What about the trusted employer system?
Pardon?
What about a trusted employer program?
Trusted employer.
So I think we're consulting. We are, as the minister said, we're consulting on.
Yeah.
The government's consulting on the program right now.
If there's any way to make it more efficient and more simpler to handle, we will do it. It is not. It is. That's what we're trying to do. I fully understand the problem. I understand that we need the workers.
And could you talk about
Thank
the
you. Thank you, unfortunately. Thank you, Mr. Minister McCauley, and thank you, Madame Brosseau. Et maintenant, Monsieur Joe Pesci-Solido. 6 minutes.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'd like to welcome the Minister and his officials to committee here. Minister, the last time you visited Steveston, East Richmond, you spent a few hours at the Hogler Farm, where you met a lot of the old-time family farmers there, the May family, the Savages, the Hoglers. You also met the young farmers that are involved in the organic industry. Can you elaborate a little bit on the thoughts of the government on the organic industry and also the support that the government is providing to that growing industry, and particularly all the great farms in Steveston that are organic?
Thank you very much, Joe. And that was a very interesting trip, and there's certainly no reason there cannot be more of that, because it's obvious they're providing fresh fruit and vegetables for the city, and that's where they came. They came there to buy them. And I think I was 3 million slack on Ms. Barrasso's. 18 million is what we've invested in the organic sector since we took government, and we fully understand how important this sector is, and we understand that there's a great market for the organic farming industry, and We're meeting with them, as was indicated here, on the regulatory process to help them put together, but that hasn't been resolved yet. But I can assure you, being a farmer, I fully understand that you have to have the regulatory process. We have to get a means in order to make sure that that's done in an efficient way. And, of course, it's not as large as some other areas, and funding is a little shorter, so we will be looking at all aspects to make sure that we can put this together.
Yeah. On your visit, Minister, you also chatted with the Mahal family and the Dillon family that operates Ocean Spray. And as you know, in that part of the eastern part of Richmond, there's a lot of berries, cranberries and blueberries. And they're interested in hearing on your visits to countries such as Vietnam, India, China, what we're looking for Japan, on how they can sell their very good products. They're good berries, cranberries, but also the wine that they're now developing from berries as well.
There's absolutely no question, and you got the farmers in your part of the world that can do it. In fact, coming back from China, we had a hybrid blueberry and agricultural tourism group with me. It was some interesting, you know, they did get signed contracts, but they also did a lot in promoting their agricultural tourism. There's a lot of people that want to come from China just to see the process, see what goes on from the time it's planted till it's processed. Could be the winery. They also have a winery. I was just talking to them, but they have a big operation, and without a doubt, these kind of people have gained a lot on these trade missions. And yes, you're absolutely right. There's a great market, and it can be filled, and we will make sure that we do. But again, it takes investment. It takes investment from the agricultural sector, and it takes some investment from the government. And that's what we have to do, and that's why we put the $100 million into science and research over the last 2 years, to make sure. That's why we have the innovation budget of the innovation budget under Navdeep Bains' department, $1.2 billion. Agriculture is one of the 6 industries that has been identified to help grow our GDP, and hopefully you receive this money. It's under his authority, but you receive the money on merit, of course, but I'm sure the agricultural sector will be quite successful in that area too. There's some money. It takes a lot of money, and we have countries all over the world doing what we're doing too, so we have to make sure we're there. We have to make sure we're promoting. We have to make sure we're doing the research. And then we have to make sure we're selling the product that we do produce.
Yeah, Minister, talking about money and investment, can you elaborate a little bit on the Canadian Agricultural Partnership, and in particular how it relates to educational institutions? Another chap that you met on the visit is Kent Mullenix. He heads up the agricultural department at Kwantlen Polytechnical. Can you elaborate a little bit on the programs that may be available on the new partnership agreement dealing with more smaller scale farms, and also how we interact with educational institutions?
Well, of course, what we want to try to do and will try to do is make sure that we have more smaller operations, more women involved in agriculture, to make sure this a portion of the dollars goes to First Nations, all which would be smaller operations. And as you know, this agreement is put together by that's under the $1 billion, and that's under our jurisdiction, but that's why that $1 billion was designated for that. Also, it's designated to make sure that we deal with environmental issues and sustainability, to make sure that we have the social trust. All of this is so vitally important if we're to progress and make sure and sell $75 billion worth of product by 2025. All of these go into the play, and that's why this partnership was put together that way. The other the other $2 billion is shared 60-40, and they also will be the dollars. The provinces and territories also are very concerned on the very issues you're talking about. And it'll be dealt with issue by issue, but it has to be there has to be an agreement between the federal government and the provinces, and we're working on that. That's not finalized yet, but it will be over the next month or so. In putting a Canadian Agricultural Partnership together, there's one thing I was told from the start: do not have the lapse. I think the last time there was a year, it caused some difficulty, and the word from the agricultural sector: do not have the lapse. So we are going to be ready to, I think the process with the provinces should be pretty well wrapped up the very first part of the year. We will be ready for applications and be sure the money will be ready to roll out.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, and Mr. Pesci-Solido, and maintenant, Madame Nassif, pour 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On November 21st, our Minister Macaulay, celebrated his 29th year as a Member of Parliament. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank him and congratulate him for the contribution he has made to our country and to his constituents. 29 years. That's something that you need to celebrate. My question: could you provide us with some details about what the government has done with respect to climate change to promote sustainable development in agriculture, and how we can have sustainable agricultural practices?
If we don't have sustainable agricultural practices, we won't have agriculture, quite simply. And we have to make sure we do that, and we have to make sure we do it by expanding not the crops, but by the production in the same amount of land. That's what we have to do. And that is, of course, why that, for an example, in the agriculture greenhouse gas program, we invested $27 million. It's so important. We also invested $100 million, as I indicate, in agricultural research. And just what happens in agricultural research, quite simply, canola alone is the prime example. It puts billions of dollars into the pockets of farmers. It was the agriculture and agri-food scientists that discovered this seed. And what it did was, that's just one small example of what can take place when you put the proper funding into research. And we will continue, hopefully, to put more. We have $25 million to adopt clean technology in agriculture. And then with, like, precision agriculture. I'd say when I farmed, I wasted some money. I put more fertilizer on than I should have in areas. Precision agriculture makes sure that what's put in the soil is used by the plant. And that puts more money in the pockets of farmers, and it also is very important to the environment and to the soil. So these are the kind of things that we have done, and there's no end. Like, out in Western Canada, there's areas where they graze the cattle all winter. They grow a crop, they cut it down, they feed the stock just as they move the fence along. What they've saved on environmental footprint is amazing. I think we increased our beef production by 50% and reduced our environmental footprint by 30%. So these are the kind of things that you have to do. And we're continue to work with farmers. Farmers are innovative. Quite simply, if you're not innovative, you won't stay in farming very long. That's simply how it is. And what the government is trying to do is to make sure that we provide the funding in order to help farmers innovate.
Minister, we know that there's a lot of work to be done, but in your opinion, what have we identified that needs our immediate attention? What are our immediate objectives in the field of agriculture?
The objective in agriculture is long-term, for sure. Immediate is to address, and I don't think that's immediate either. We have to start immediately addressing the environmental issues, the soil, air, and water. We have to take care of that. But we also have to make sure that we have the proper funding in place to, like precision agriculture, to make sure the proper drainage is done, to make sure that, like there's so many programs put in place that help to make sure that the proper fertilizers put in the soil for the plant to absorb. These are the kind of things that we have to continue to do, and we're doing it. And if we don't do that, we cannot meet our commitment. But we will, and the opportunity is there.
Do still have time? Une minute. Donc,
1 minute. Are these problems resolved by policies, or do you feel that we need new types of research to be done for agricultural development?
I'm not a scientist to start with, but what we have to do is develop seeds that use less fertilizer and less water. That's the type of thing that we have to do. We have to be able to make sure that we put the proper funding in place, that the scientists can do the work. We have the people that are capable to do the research. We just have to make sure that they're hired by the Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada to do it, and we're going to do that.
thank you, Mr. Minister.
Yeah.
Madame Nassif, et maintenant, Mr. Macaulay for 6 minutes.
Thank you. I didn't realize it's 29 years. Congratulations. 10 more, you can catch up to Minister Goodale.
No, I'm a few months ahead of Goodale.
Mr. Corvo, I mentioned earlier about the $3 million. I'll move on, but can you provide to us what countries and for what programs that's going to? For the
Yeah, we can provide the committee the
fantastic.
answer. It's primarily going again to international organization, not to specific individual.
Okay, maybe provide it to us.
Yeah.
I just want to get back again to the canola. That was September 2016, the Prime Minister announced that we had the deal, which is wonderful, and I know it goes to 2020. But part of it, the comment is, with this compromise, both sides agreed to conduct research to find, and quoting the Prime Minister, a science-based solution. That's what I'm trying to get at. How far along are we with this research, so we don't end up in 2019 or 2020 with this again, where perhaps a foreign nation is abusing perhaps
I can assure you that trade is never easy. We're going to be there in 2020, but we are
I'm
all
just asking about the
what we're doing.
Science-based solution, the research. It's
We are working. We have scientists and people from CFIA that are working with the Chinese, and we have Chinese that come here. We have Chinese AQSIQ people come to look at the process. What they want to do is see how we handle it, and they have been here, and we've had agricultural experts and scientists in China.
Of course,
The
we
point is,
believe there's no disease transmission through this.
Pardon?
We believe, Canadians believe, there's no disease transmission through the canola, as the Chinese had claimed a couple years ago. I think the research will show that. I'm asking, how far along are we with this cooperative research to prove,
well, I'll let
Canadian
my
farming?
deputy answer the question, but I'll tell you there's sometimes countries are very big on science-based research, but then sometimes they're not.
Right.
And that can be a difficulty without a question. Chris?
So maybe it is a 4-year, plan, I think, or 4-year period, as you mentioned at the beginning. So, the first stage is to lay out, kind of a research plan between the two groups of scientists. That's been done. And so now, effectively, it's the research stage, and I think that's ongoing.
That's what I'm trying to ask. Thanks for the answer.
So that'll be ongoing for the next few years.
Great.
But
Minister,
I think it's important to note that
Minister, I have my answer. I'm short on time, so I'm going to move on, please. The food guide, there's been some concerns expressed by farmers, beef, dairy farmers, about the change in the food guide by the health guide that suggested that the new health guide promotes plant-based protein over beef, dairy protein, and doesn't promote using lean beef rather than encouraging plant-based. I'm just wondering, has that concern been expressed to you? Have you expressed those concerns to the Health Canada side of the food guide to ensure that we...
Well, I can assure you, Mr. Macaulay, there has been some discussion between ministers on
That's what I want to hear.
the health and the food guide.
Yeah, right. Industry has commented they weren't consulted by Health Canada, unlike they had been in the past. Was that part of your discussion with the health minister as well?
Well, I cannot. indicate whether the health minister did or did not consult with people. I expect that they did. But all I can respond to was what we did in agriculture and agri-food, but as you know, it's under the Department of Health.
Right. Would you have expressed industry's concerns to Health Canada that this sudden change after so many years of showing that Canadian beef is a good part of a person's diet as opposed to moving away from that?
I had some views, yes.
Very loud views, I hope. I'm giving you a chance to shine here.
Listen,
I stood up for agriculture.
Yeah,
That's what I want to hear. Quickly, just one of the issues, obviously, that we have in the West is with the carbon tax. A lot of our farm items are, of course, exported. People we're exporting to do not have a carbon tax, which makes our exports less competitive. I'm just wondering if you could just comment on about what adjustments we're doing for our farm industry to offset this uncompetitive added fee and added tax.
Well, thank you very much. And as you know, there's certain fuels and stuff exempt, but you're also aware, without a doubt, that any money that's collected is returned to the province, and it's up to the province to decide whether it's allocated back to the farmers. You know what took place in British Columbia, and it was allocated back to the farmers. That's the decision by the provincial government.
Not fully. You're right. Not fully. And in Alberta, we see.
Are you telling me that farmers were not compensated fully?
If you look, they were charged GST, and the new proof out by the Fraser Institute.
Well, I was a farmer before I came here.
It's never enough rain. There's always too much rain. I've heard it from farmers.
Oh no, well, yeah.
What about would you commit to removing the GST from carbon levies across the country?
Well, of course, as you, we're having an interesting discussion, but of course, as you know, decisions are made by Cabinet, but that would be a Minister of Finance decision.
Thank you, Mr. McCauley. Thank you, Mr. McCauley.
Appreciate it.
And now we'll move to Mr. Longfield for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the Minister for being here and his officials. I want to drill in a little bit more on the Canadian Agricultural Partnership, and you mentioned the gap that existed in the previous government where there was a period of time where funds weren't moving, and then the application period kicks in, and so there's another delay in getting funds into the marketplace as you wait for applications to come in. And to the point where in the last funding cycle, before I was a member of Parliament, the agriculture community in Guelph was saying, in future years, when you implement programs, could you back-end load them because we can't be ready in time for the rollouts. So there was an expectation that we were going to be late on getting rollouts. Could you talk about what's being done on the bilaterals in order to keep a smooth flow of funds going into innovation and in the other programs that we have under the Canadian Agricultural Partnership?
Well, Mr. Longfield, you're fully aware of what takes place in innovation and how important it is that the money keeps flowing. And of course, when the consultation started, one of the first things I was warned was to make sure that we did not have the lapse that we had previously, because it hurts.
Yep.
Because it hurts innovation, it hurts research, it hurts all the programs that are done under Growing Forward 2 and now under the CAP program.
We felt the pain.
What is taking place right now is that the first part of the year, all the provinces will have an agreement with the Government of Canada. And on April the 1st, no, the programs will be applied for before April the 1st. We will be able to roll out money after April the 1st to make sure that we have a continual flow, because there are some, being from Guelph, you're more than aware how important the funding is, and to make sure that we continue the funding, and yes, that will happen.
That's great. And on your behalf, I've made a few announcements lately where last week I was at Morexis that are making nanotechnology particles from corn. Neither one of us probably know what the nanotechnology is that they're using, but in terms of a farmer, there's 4,500 tons per year of corn going into nanotechnology instead of into the commodity markets, which gives the farmers a stable customer that are going to be using this on an ongoing basis to make skin creams and cancer treatments. We also announced at the ARCO Research Station $1.12 million for Canadian Animal Health Coalition, a great group of people, farmers and industry people, that are looking at safe transportation of animals, something that we studied here at committee, and it was so good to see your ministry stepping up and helping with the safe treatment of animals going forward. So where we have innovation funds, I know last time we talked about the estimates, I said there's innovation funds in agriculture, there's innovation funds from the Department of Innovation, Science and Economic Development. And which ones do we go to in which cases? These are all agriculture innovations that help both sides of the farm gate. Could you talk about the collaboration that you have, that you're developing with the strategic innovation funds, with ICED, with the Department of Health, and other departments that we're working on?
Two agricultural programs that are still eligible under Navdeep Baines's $1.2 billion budget.
Right.
That will be reduced slightly, but hopefully that they will end up there. There's a lot of money involved there, $1.2 billion.
Right.
And it's great to see it. But of course, previous to this, agriculture could not apply to those. So it's pretty important that they're able to do this. Innovation is just so important. You know, having been a farmer, I picked potatoes on my knees, and the last potatoes I shipped never touched the human hand, and that's 25 years ago. So that'll give you an idea of what's going on. We just signed a deal on pork for $18 million in Argentina. More pork needs to be produced. We have to. The opportunities are coming, and we get the farmers that can do it, and Lloyd, that's exactly why we're putting the dollars in there, to make sure.
And I think when you mentioned potatoes, I had the Unitarian Service Committee in my office this morning talking about the new developments in the Yukon Gold potato that was developed in Guelph and is now being used in developing countries, and the investments in that technology to help developing countries. In the minute I have left, the importance of us working on international programs, working through international relief organizations to provide Canadian solutions to drought-stricken areas, lower growing crops so that hurricanes don't damage the crops, and so that we work through organizations like USC and through Global Affairs Canada to provide food to parts of the world that are struggling.
You're talking about research in these areas.
Well, I'm talking about
the
agriculture connections to Global Affairs Canada, that we do have a responsibility on the international stage to assist areas of the world where droughts and other problems, wars, damage the food supply, and Canada has some solutions there. So it's important that we continue to invest in international programs, international agencies, as was talked about earlier, in more of a negative way. I'm putting the positive on this.
I couldn't agree more, and you have to collaborate. And I think I caught that you mentioned potatoes. And just for an example, the wireworm and potatoes, research is so much required there. They did come up with a solution. Very, not a costly solution, but a lot of research to come to that point. That's why it's so important that research dollars are there. It can cost enormous amount of dollars for potato farmers.
But
and
people's
on the world
lives depend
stage,
on it.
yes, we have to be there.
People's lives depend on it. Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Longfield, and thank you, Minister McCauley, for being here. I think it's the third or fourth time that you've been here at our committee, and we're certainly always happy to have you here. We'll break for 1 minute and come back with the Deputy Minister and Assistant Deputy Minister.
Please, si on peut prendre nos places.
C'est ça que je pensais d'ailleurs. Avec tout ce bord de l'eau, tu sais. Va-t'en Cuba. OK, maintenant on peut poser des questions.
Oui, oui. Monsieur McCauley est parti?
Yeah.
Y a-t-il quelqu'un d'autre qui vient?
C'est moi.
Non, mais t'étais là avant. Là.
Je sais-tu, j'ai-tu l'air de Jojo Savard?
Alors, we're going to get back to business. So I think there you want to make an opening statement, Deputy Minister Forbes.
Sure, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the chance for Pierre and I to be here, and wanted to update you a bit more on the Canadian Agricultural Partnership, which was the purpose of, I think, this second hour here. Au début, j'aimerais vous remercier tous pour l'excellent.
I'd like to begin by thanking you all for the excellent work and the broad consultations that you undertook to produce your report on the next strategic framework for agriculture. Your work and your consultations will continue to inform our discussions and decision-making when we implement the new Canadian Agricultural Partnership over the next few months. I would like to further clarify the comments made by the Minister regarding the partnership. As you know, a lot of progress has been achieved since the presentation of your report in March.
Provincial and territorial partners and with industry, and we expect a smooth transition between Growing Forward 2 and the Canadian Agricultural Partnership on April 1st. We are sitting down with the provinces and territories to finalize the bilateral agreements that will clearly define cost-shared program arrangements, reporting, and performance criteria for each province and territory. We'll have total federal and provincial territorial investments of $3 billion to help support the growth of Canada's agriculture and agri-food sector over the next 5 years. Puisque l'agriculture est une compétence partagée,
since agriculture is a matter of shared jurisdiction, funding will be shared as between the governments, 60% from the federal government, 40% from the provinces and territories. In addition to focusing on trade and innovation, the Canadian Partnership for Agriculture will stimulate investments in priority areas such as environmental sustainability, climate change, and public confidence.
It will recognize and engage those who have been underrepresented in agriculture in the past: women, youth, Indigenous peoples, and people with disabilities. As well, the partnership will give provinces and territories the flexibility to meet the diverse needs of their regions and industries. Also, under the partnership, producers will continue to have access to robust business risk management programs. Les ministres ont convenu d'apporter des améliorations clés à
the ministers agreed to make key improvements to the business risk management program. For example, there will be a better protection against volatility and catastrophes. For example, the government's responded to the concerns made by industry with respect to the participation rate and the reference margins in stability.
Programs to assess program effectiveness and the impact on growth and innovation. The review will include an expert panel, an external expert panel consisting of producers, academics, and other industry stakeholders, as well as broader stakeholder engagement. Mr. Chair, the federally funded programs announced by the Minister last week address the priorities outlined for the Canadian Agricultural Partnership. And I'll just touch on a few specific examples. On markets and trade, there will be the agri-marketing program that will help small and medium-sized agribusinesses compete on world markets. On science and innovation, the Agri-Innovate program will help agricultural businesses innovate and commercialize their innovations. Dans le cadre du programme Agri-Sciences, les grappes scientifiques.
Under the agri-science program, the scientific clusters will be strengthened to meet industry requirements. As far as the environment is concerned, science will be used to help producers adapt to climate change. As for public confidence, the agri-insurance program will help industry prove that the quality and sustainability of its products will prove the sustainability amongst buyers.
On April 1st, et je suis heureux de répondre à vos questions avec mon collègue, M. Corriveau. Merci.
Alors, merci.
We'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
And Mr. Corriveau, you didn't have a statement, okay. Alors, on va passer à la période de questions.
So we'll turn to questions. Mrs. Boucher, Madame Boucher, for 6 minutes. Thank you for coming here. I have a lot of questions that I could ask you, but I'll begin by asking a question about the partnership. I'd like you to explain something. In the legislative summary provided by the library, we see that the total of votes adopted, and it includes $6.8 million, which will be transferred to other organizations such as the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and to support initiatives such as Growing Forward 2, etc. We can see that you have doubled the number of programs, but with the same amounts. So I'd like you to explain two things to me. What are the shared cost programs under Growing Forward 2? And if you double the number of programs, but you keep the funding levels at the same rate, there will be cutbacks in certain programs. Do you know which programs will be reduced? And if so, why? I'll begin, and Mr. Corriveau may want to add to what I say. It's the same funding, $3 billion for Growing Forward 1, Growing Forward 2, and the partnership. So $3 billion. I didn't really understand where you got the doubling, and you said that you're doubling the programs. I'll read it to you. You said that the same amount was invested in federal initiatives, but with a new partnership, they will be managing 2 times the number of programs, 6 instead of 3. Oh, the number of programs. Yes, you've doubled the number of programs, but with the same funding levels, the $3 billion you referred to. So if you double the number of programs, but you keep the same funding levels, something doesn't work here, and as far as I'm concerned, and I'd like to know, I'd like you to explain what are the shared cost programs in this. I would like to understand which programs are cost shared. And if you've kept the funding levels the same, but you say you're doubling the number of programs, are there programs that are going to be cut? And if so, which programs are going to be cut? I'll try to answer clearly. We have 6 programs, 6 for the partnership. That doesn't mean we have doubled each of the programs. We may have divided one program into 2. It's not a cut. It's just that we have 2 programs where before we had 1. That's all. We didn't provide amounts for these programs over the next 5 years. This will be announced in the next few months. But for the time being, there are no major cutbacks. So there may be a change in emphasis. Maybe we will be focusing more on the environment and climate change, but there won't be a great deal of change, for example, in the total amount of money spent on marketing or exports. So you've divided a program into 2. That's one way to explain why there are 6 programs. I don't have any figures with me, but you kept the same total funding amount. Yes, it's the same total amount. So how do you do this? We have more programs to manage, but we have the same funding levels. So do you not? The programs are going to be diluted, therefore, if the funding levels haven't changed. one of the two programs is going to suffer, no? Perhaps I'm not expressing myself clearly. At any rate, we could explain each program and explain what's going to happen so that you have a better understanding of each program. I could do that, or Pierre could add something. Some programs in the past, under Growing Forward 2, where we didn't spend all the money, so what we reviewed all of the programs to ensure that the budgets allocated for the various programs were 100% spent, but under the there's an update for some of the other programs, and when we learned from the past, we learned from with our new partnership program, there will be some adjustments. But people aren't going to feel this because in some instances the funding was not spent 100%. And the cost-shared programs, if I have 30 seconds, under the current and past framework, most of these programs were cost-shared. So 60 cents came from the federal government, 40 from the province. Certain programs were delivered by the federal government, certain by the federal government. And we also have programs that are 100% federally funded. Mr. Douin, 6 minutes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Components of the new policy framework, and one of them is the public trust aspect. And we know as more and more Canadians live in urban Canada, and I'm very happy that provinces and the federal government have agreed to highlight the importance of the public trust aspect. And just wondering if you could share some details into what the accomplishments of that particular aspect of that would be, and how, if perhaps it's too soon, but what type of projects would you see in the public trust component of the new cap?
Sure. No, thanks for that question. So under that program, which is Agri Assurance, certainly it's about allowing industry to make kind of verifiable claims about processes or the nature of their products, whether it's the health and safety of it. And certainly it's, the goal of it is to help industry build capacity towards, explaining how products are grown, transformed, so that Canadians understand what they're eating, and that the industry's meeting consumer demands. So we would expect to have, national assurance products, could be from a commodity group or groups around a process, whether it's around sustainability, that kind of, environmental sustainability. It could also get into areas like third-party certifications, right? So how, are you letting smaller organizations or producers have their products certified by outsiders having met certain standards? So the idea is helping either industry groups or individual producers, be able to market verifiably to consumers how their products are meeting consumers' needs.
And obviously one of the issues that we see is that some of the we see it in the fast food industry. Some of these, without naming them, but some of these companies use, false marketing, essentially saying that, we don't use product X, or animals haven't been raised with hormones and whatnot, meaning, knowing full well that actually in Canada it's illegal to do so. Is that going to be looking at that as well, or could look at that potentially?
I think if people are making false claims, certainly governments or others would want to be looking at, ensuring that people who are making unverifiable claims that are misleading, that those are challenged. This program, I think, these programs would be more about building, if you will, verifiable standards or claims that can be verified by regulators across the country, and so that consumers can trust that, in some sense, when they read something, they know that this meets a certain commitment or up to a certain standard in terms of the way the product is produced.
The other issue that we've heard at this committee over the past year, just on numerous studies, was trying to build the capacity within the Market Access Secretariat, and we get the non-trade barriers keep coming up, and I know that we're engaging with renegotiating NAFTA. We're potentially looking at TPP, and potentially, that we're going to be looking at China very soon. So are we looking at building up capacity within that secretariat so we can get faster approval processes so they can work with other countries? Is that something that you guys are looking at?
Well, we certainly always look at how we can leverage the people we have and the teams we have. So how can Agriculture Canada with the Canada Food Inspection Agency and Global Affairs Canada, work together collaboratively with industry to do as much as we can with the assets we have, with the resources we have. So we're always looking to prioritize, work collaboratively on market access issues to get as much as we can. I don't get to necessarily, wave a wand to get more resources, but the resources I have, we try to use as effectively and target priorities as much as we can, the sector's priorities, in terms of market access, and we work with the sector to help identify those. At the same time, we do have you're right to flag, trade negotiations and new trade agreements, and so that is another area that occupies a fair bit of our time. A lot of trade discussions ongoing, and certainly something that we work to open up these markets and then maintain and build access. And certainly just say finally that under the partnership, there is an ongoing emphasis on trade, particularly with marketing, agri-marketing, which will be there to help small and medium-sized companies in terms of promoting their goods outside the country.
And perhaps the last point is on value-added investments, and I'm not sure if that was part of the negotiations with provinces, but we know we do a great job at exporting produce and what farmers produce, but what we are trying to do is transform and process more foods here in Canada. And, just to give you an example, one farmer says, I'd love to transform, on-farm processing, but then it becomes a tax issue with regards to, especially in Ontario, they can't give tax breaks, municipal tax breaks to companies or any of that. And is that part of are the provinces, from your understanding, are they aware of that? Because I know in Quebec they can give some incentives to attract companies, but in Ontario I know they can't do that. So that was a potential barrier where I know they could get the funds through the cap, but their thinking was like, well, if I've got 25% of my land that's dedicated to the house and the farm, but then the field, if I dedicate another 10%, then my tax bill suddenly goes way up, and that was potentially a barrier. So is that, from your understanding, has that been risen at some point or highlighted?
So I think, I'm not going to answer about Ontario. I'm not familiar with Ontario's policies. I would just say it has been, value-added processing, again, was a priority when ministers came together to talk, not this past summer, but the summer before, in Calgary, about priorities for this agricultural partnership. So they certainly, a lot of the programming, both the cost-shared and the federal-only programming, is accessible to them. And then there's also the broader, and the minister mentioned some of this under the Innovation and Skills Agenda from the Strategic Innovations Fund, certainly some room there for some financial support from the government, and then also the Superclusters program, right, which would really touch the whole value chain from primary.
It's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Merci, M. Drouin. Et maintenant, Mme Brosseau pour 6 minutes.
I'd like to thank the officials for being with us for the second hour. I had hope. I had 3 more minutes back at the minister, but sadly I didn't have any more questions because he had to go. Time always goes fairly quickly. There are a lot of points I wanted to clarify with the minister. I know I asked questions about the Canadian organic standards, but I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding. He said that the federal government does support organics, and as you know, that this is a big issue when we look at Canadian organics compared to our major trading partners, the U.S. and the European Union. They get a lot of support. To be certified organic, we need to support the industry. And I've had a lot of discussions with people in the organics in Quebec and my riding, and they were wondering if the federal government will commit to a consistent funding, a multi-year funding for support for the Canadian organics regime. Can you tell me, is there any funding for the support of the organics for the standards?
So I guess maybe I'll two-part. I mean, we don't set aside specific funding for specific sectors in the programming. I mean, it's all application-based, the programming that I talked about.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it all depends on, in a specific sector or company will depend on the application and how it fits in under the programming. So in some sense, it's hard for me to answer that question absent knowing what the specific request was.
We'll have to wait and see, or they'll have to try to fit it into a program.
Now, I would just, I guess the second part to be, we do have a value chain roundtable with the organic sector
Yeah.
that does try to work through, some of these issues about coordination and how, again, we can leverage different efforts to, for consultation and engagement. And I know that doesn't answer your funding question per se, but
it doesn't, because it does put the Canadian, organic sector at a disadvantage compared to our trading partners, because they don't have the support of the federal government. And we know that, when people are getting into farming, and especially young farmers, they're getting more and more into organic, and there is no support to transition to organic compared to other countries. So that's something that the government should look into, because it's an important industry, and we're really hoping to have some kind of clear support from the government on this. It was brought up quickly at committee by Mr. Drouin. We're signing trade agreements. We have the PTT, Le Partenariat Trans-Pacifique. They're looking at China. NAFTA, our committee actually traveled, and we met with a lot of elected officials in the States, and they said, we got to do no harm, but we know that supply management is under threat. And it is disconcerting. It does concern me, the state of supply management. We have the report from the Auditor General that came out that clarified and validated that there are significant losses. There are problems with CBSA. I would have liked to have the minister answer this question more about reaffirming support for supply management and making sure that we do not have any more market access. But I think can I ask questions on CFIA? Would you be able to answer questions on CFIA on another subject?
We're Agriculture Canada, so we would tend to, if it's a financial issue or a program issue related to our material. Yeah.
So one big concern and questions that I've been getting is how is the government evaluating and reviewing the business risk management programs? Because there was some programs that worked well and others that needed improvement. And how are you working with industry and farmers to make sure that it is getting it right this time?
So we're working, first of all with the provinces and territories. Obviously, our financial partners in BRM, and then obviously farmers and industry are the users of the program. So all are involved, and the process that is a joint federal-provincial process. Ministers tasked us with coming back by next July with the results of a review of the BRM suite of programs to ensure that that they were effective, kind of in the current and future environment. So a couple of aspects to it. There's an external panel that we're putting together, not entirely finalized or not entirely done yet, but probably about half a dozen, academics, individual producers, and external, experts that would bring a range of expertise to, kind of support a review of the program. There'll be some work done by officials, and then there'll also be engagement processes with the stakeholder groups.
So will there be flexibility throughout the 5 years? Will the panel be able to make recommendations over the next few years, and if a program isn't working, there'd be able to be modifications? Because we know agri-stability didn't get much take-up.
So the plan, what ministers tasked was to have a review with kind of results or recommendations back by next July. Now, what specifically those, I don't want to prejudge the outcome of those, whether those would be specific changes, directional, exactly how those will look. We'll have to see exactly how that plays out.
So there's no questions on CFIA. I had a lot of questions on CFIA. Maybe I could table a motion to have that, have the CFIA come to Agriculture Committee, because I have a lot of questions for them. So you have confirmed earlier in the first round that you will be able to give us the numbers for the applications received from producers broken down by province and territory?
Yes,
that is available?
The minister committed to that. We can share that material.
And we have no idea when the program will open again.
Well, I don't have a precise date. I say in the next few months. So whether that would be like when exactly over the winter, spring that will be, I think will depend a bit on a range of issues. But we will try to do that in a timely
And there's
manner.
no more money.
The program is a $250 million program. Yep. So that's the way programs work.
Is everybody?
Merci, Madame Brosseau. Thank you, Mr. Forbes. And now, Mr. Pesci-Solido for 6 minutes.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'd like to thank again Mr. Forbes, or Deputy Minister Forbes, and Mr. Corriveau for being here and answering our questions. I'd like to follow up on Madame Brosseau's question on organic farming. Organic farming is important to me. It's important to my constituents. I have a lot of farmers who are in the organic industry. It seems to be a burgeoning field, and in my view, and a lot of support from other members of our caucus, that organics, not only is it important, but it can work very well with a traditional model of farming. If I would ask a question that if there was an application for, let's say, $600,000 for long-term funding to create a multi-year system for a certification plan, is that something that's feasible, and would the department be open to having Canadian farmers on par with farmers in the States and other parts of the world when they try to export our organic products to other markets?
So, again, I hate to comment on a hypothetical, application, but certainly we have a range of programming, depending on the nature of what someone was looking for, whether it's assurance. We do marketing programming for people looking to export. We have science and innovation programs, and indeed organic farmers and organizations do get funding under some of our research and commercialization programming right now. So we would expect, there's nothing a priori that would tell me that, whether it was under the assurance stream, whether it was under, so I can't say that this one would get it, but I think there's nothing a priori that tells me that a specific program application would be turned down because it was from the organic sector versus any other sector. In fact, we have a track record of funding in all the areas of our programming.
Mr. Forbes, as I mentioned earlier on, there's a great deal of support for the organic industry within the Liberal caucus. Perhaps, rather than the specifics, we can get your thoughts on how the department views the organic industry.
Well, certainly our view would be we want to give producers the choice to produce in the way that they want to produce, and certainly if there are those who wish to, produce in an organic fashion, there would certainly be no reason to dissuade them. Or we certainly, when we look at our research proposals, and where we do research, we try to do research in a broad range of areas of public interest, or where there's public good, and certainly, there may be reason to do that in the organics as much as anywhere else. So we're open to kind of, as I say, good science. People who are marketing, we're certainly, we're not looking at whether it's organic versus non-organic. We will promote any, if it's a good proposal with a good marketing, plan. Those are the projects we're looking for.
In the minister's mandate letter, our Prime Minister mandated a food security policy. Can you elaborate a little bit on how the department views the CAP program and how that could be helpful to a food security policy?
The food policy. I guess as the CAP program, certainly, the food policy covers, food safety, health. It covers the economic side. And certainly when you look at, some of the programming there, certainly, all of these areas are areas that can be supported by programming under the agricultural partnership and potentially other areas. So certainly, on the economic side, we are looking at growing markets. Exports are a priority under CAP. Certainly under the assurance program, issues of food safety and food production methods come up. So we certainly think that the CAP is a good complementary piece or a good input into a successful food policy, we hope.
Mr. Forbes, I'd also like to follow up on a question I asked the minister on CAP program funding or other funding for educational institutions. I talked about Kwantlen Polytechnical Institute and their farming program, but there's these institutions all across Canada. Can you elaborate a little bit on how the CAP program and other funding envelopes can be helpful to our educational institutions?
Well, I mean, certainly on a couple of fronts. One is that, our research is very collaborative. Our researchers work with industry, with academia, right, both domestically and internationally, and with the provinces in terms of the research agenda, much of which comes under CAP. And so you will see a lot of partnerships that, where our scientists are working with researchers in universities, to support industry's priorities. I'd also say that, from a university standpoint, we also are a big hirer of, we are the biggest agricultural research group in the country, and so to the extent that we're hiring and bringing in new people, those are graduates, whether they're with masters or doctorates, frequently from Canadian institutions, and so we have very good links there. And maybe the final point, just we are in some cases, co-located or nearly co-located. I think of Saskatoon as an example where, we're right sort of in the middle of, if you will, of the University of Saskatoon. So there's lots of sort of day-to-day synergies, I think, of the relationship.
One final quick thing. In Guelph.
In Guelph is another example, yes, pardon me.
One final quick thing. Would there be any new specific programs that can be helpful under CAP for our agricultural exporters? Particularly, we were talking about new markets, China, Vietnam, Japan.
Yeah. So I think that, the programs, the agri-marketing program, I think, is the primary vehicle that's about, promoting our development of international markets, for sure, for Canadian companies. And so that, I think, will be the primary program that will be of interest to those looking to export. But certainly the other programs on the innovation and competitiveness side will help people capture and gain new markets. So we think that there's a broad link to the export strategy.
Thank you, Mr. Forbes. Thank you, Mr. Pesci-Solido. And now Mr. Longfield for 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I'll be sharing my time with Mr. Sims. Get some questions from the East Coast, from Newfoundland, if we can squeeze those in as well. Back in Ontario, we've been working very closely with your department. I have to give a shout out to two individuals, Adriana Zolani and Tom Rosser, who are at every agriculture event that I go to, and they're always working with the university, with OMAFRA, with provincially. One of the issues that Guelph is working on right now, one of the many issues, is around sustainability in agriculture. The United Nations International Trade Center has the Sustainable Agriculture Initiative, the SAI, which awards bronze, silver, gold to producers based on sustainability initiatives. Now, we have 33,000 environmental farm plans in Ontario, and we have standards that we meet that are measured against the SAI. So Japan, for instance, said to the grain farmers of Ontario, you have to show us you're meeting the SAI standards. We don't have a national coordination of sustainability initiatives between provinces. Maybe could you comment on what we could do around a national environmental farm plan or farm plan summit, and what the government's role could maybe play in getting us to the SAI approvals?
So I think it's I think something where there are sort of province by province, you have approaches to environmental farm plans. So moving to a national certainly would have some benefits, I think, as you've outlined. I think the role of, and the minister, I think, referred to this in his remarks. I think the role of the federal government certainly under CAP is just a convener and a supporter of how some of this could work and bringing people together to find solutions. But it would, I think, consistency and coherence across the country, I think, in these things can be quite helpful. And as you point out, I think bring clarity in export markets in particular, where the distinction between different regions of the country may not be totally obvious to everybody.
Super. They'll be glad to hear that you're interested. And I'll pass over to Mr. Sims. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And, well, let me establish this at the beginning. I'm a temp. I'm here on a special guest pass, to be quite honest with you. So if I ask something that's apropos of nothing, I apologize in advance. But I do recall that, thank you, throughout my writing, I get a lot of interest in the Growing Forward program. And I get a lot of interest not only from the people applying for it, but also through the media as they put a spotlight on a growing industry, pardon the expression. And I have a lot of great young farmers, and we live on a rock, so that tells you how good they are. So, but in doing this program, I see with Growing Forward 2, the money apportioned, so on and so forth, what are some of the dynamics of the program that are changing to better suit the needs? And I'm thinking of, I'll say, the next generation of farming, because they seem to be the larger amount of recipients in my area.
And fishing.
Well, agriculture too, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I think the one specific point that I would say is there'll be a program specifically, sort of the agri-diversity program, we're calling it, which will, be around encouraging, bringing people who have not been in farming before or not been underrepresented in the agricultural sector. And so I think, the examples we provide are often youth, indigenous peoples, women, persons with disabilities. So finding ways to bring them into the agricultural sector.
Was that a challenge? In the beginning, it was a challenge doing that at the beginning, and now you want to expand that?
Well, so this would be a new program, and so I think this is, this is part of the government's inclusive growth agenda would be to bring, this program into play to kind of, and again, starting with, how do we, as much about education and awareness and kind of building outreach and support as much as anything else to get, make those links and bring people into the sector.
Yeah, I think the outreach is a good element of it, the more marketing of it, because there are a lot of farmers, and again, the younger ones, both that and aquaculture, who don't know about this, of course, especially in the agriculture part of it. Switching gears in the bit of time that I have, these same farmers in my area talk a lot lately about CETA, and how do I get involved in that? Not involved per se, is where's the opportunity lie? So moving forward on this, what has the department looked at in reaching out to people, say, CETA provides us some very good opportunities. So that's a two-part question. How are we thus far in CETA? Because there has been some time. It's over 95% of it's being applied now, provisionally. So therefore, it gives us some gauge. And how do we outreach to say, here's an opportunity?
So I think it's probably on your first part. It's been in place for 3 months, and so I probably can't give you any hard data.
Yeah, I realize that.
But I guess I would say that there is definitely a lot of interest, right, from across the agricultural sector for the opportunities, and certainly I was personally with the minister in Europe earlier in the fall, and the interest from a range of sectors, agricultural sectors, for opportunities.
Can you name one, a couple?
Well, the beef and pork, the meat sector, I think was a big one where I was in Italy, and in Italy largely looking at opportunities there. But there were others that were trade show. I wasn't at the trade shows, but there are a range of, whether it's horticulture, even oils and beef and pork. So a range of sectors, I would say.
Thank you, Mr. Forbes, and thank you, Mr. Sims. Good job. And I'd like to ask the consent of the committee, if we could. I'd like to give a few minutes to Ms. Brasso. I need 5 minutes at the end to approve the sub-Bs. So if we could do 5, and 3, are we good with that?
Yes.
Okay, so we are at Mr. Abul Taif.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Forbes and Mr. Corrigan. I'm on the international development side of the world. I've got just a quick question here. The estimate shows or provide a transfer of $255,000 and $21 from the Department of Foreign Affairs to the Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food for staff located abroad. At the same time, I've noticed that the international development funding for agriculture was $345 million last year, while in the previous government, under the conservative government, was about $645 million. The question is, has the number of agriculture affairs employees abroad decreased to match the decrease in the total budget or not?
So maybe I can explain the estimate.
Yes, please.
The $250,000 that's coming back from the Department of Global Affairs, it's an adjustment. So at the beginning of the year, we sent about $4.9 million to the Department of Global Affairs for the staff that are located at Mission Abroad. We currently have about 35 employees at 20 different embassies or consulate around the world to support the Canadian market. I wouldn't be able to go back to previous year, but I think this is in a growing area. We've been adding people. The reference of the transfer back from Global Affairs, just we had some delays in staffing in 2 positions in Europe, so they returned the funds to the department when it's unused for that purpose.
So can we receive something in writing on that, just to make sure we keep records straight for our own? Okay, another question. I have. I was reading, call it a disturbing report from the Auditor General, and I just want to make sure that you're aware of it, and then you can confirm that this spring, estimated of $168 million in duties were not collected on $131 million worth of chicken, turkey, beef, and eggs, and dairy products imported into Canada. The number is very, very significant, and can you confirm this information? Are you aware of this report and what the ministry is planning to do in order to bring those money back to Canadian, to Canada, to our budget, to our department, and to make sure that we employ that into justice, I guess?
So maybe 3, but yes, we are definitely aware of the report. Probably worth pointing out that obviously the border, management is not our department; it's the CBSA that's at the border. But I think, as the minister laid out, CBSA has taken a number of actions at the border with increased verification and other activities that have, we've seen a big drop-off, and he referred in specific to the spent fowl imports, which was one of the issues that was raised by the sector, one of the largest issues raised, and we've seen a significant reduction in items coming in that are claiming to be spent foul so far this year, which would suggest that the extra activities at the border are working. We are looking, and again, I think Ms. Brosseau raised this in terms of there are other suggestions that have been put forward by the industry, be it DNA testing or working with the Americans on sort of a joint sort of confirmation of the nature of the product, and these are issues that we look at on an ongoing basis to see if they are feasible to implement.
Help me a little bit on this. When something like this happens, I guess into the classification, bringing the product here, okay, things happen, people cheated in a way to make sure that they avoid paying the duties that they're supposed to be paid. In one sense, we're losing money. Second, and we're putting our industries in such a disadvantage over the product coming from overseas. Yeah. So, on the process, do you think there's a flaws there, or there's a loophole that these people were able to use in order to for this to happen? And what extra measures the ministry is planning to do in order to be able to avoid that in the future?
So again, it's not my department that is in charge with that, so it's hard for me to comment on what someone else will do per se, but I will say there have been extra activities from the CBSA. And obviously then there are, for people who are caught, and it's again not my area of expertise or my department, but people who break the rules, wherever this is, whether it's importing, whether it's a speeding ticket, right? There are fines and penalties and sanctions that occur, and that's not my area of expertise in this case, but I would just say that obviously, when you're caught with fraudulent description of an import, as an example, there are costs and ramifications for you.
Thank you, Mr. Forbes, and thank you, Mr. Abou Zaïb. Madame Nassif, pour 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The minister talked about the funding of innovation in agriculture. Could you please give us some examples? What types of projects, agricultural projects, are receiving funding?
Better in English, but the minister in the last budget, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development, under the Inclusive Innovation Agenda, a program called the Strategic Innovation Fund was announced, which provides support for investments in business, in the manufacturing sector largely, and this combined a number of programs that previously were not available to the agriculture or the agri-food sector, and the agri-food sector is now eligible under this new program. So that will provide support as the minister said, subject obviously to applications of being assessed, but the expectation is that there would be some food processors who would be eligible. The Superclusters program, as part of the innovation agenda, also is of course of interest to the sector. This is a program that will provide support to large clusters of combined proponents looking at kind of building a value chain and around innovation in a subsector. And so in this case, there are a number of proposals I think being considered. They're in the agriculture and food sector. So a couple of examples of other programs that are supportive of the food and agriculture sector.
Non, merci. Je me demande.
Thank you. Can we better develop this type of project? Could you expand? As we can we better develop these projects? We look at our projects to determine whether the project is coherent, whether it ties in with the Minister of Innovation's mandate. I think it's, as I said, we have fixed amounts for our programs, but there are always ways to be more effective and to be more coherent. When we look at other departmental programs or other provincial programs, we find that programs that are well designed work well together. How much time do I have remaining? 1 minute. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Okay. Most of the money for the estimate is for cost share programs in growing forward in the area of market development. $18.7 million has been allocated to this program. Could you please provide me with a list of programs that are funded under this? These are cost-shared programs. Most of these programs are delivered by the provinces, so responsibility, that's part of the amounts that you voted in favor of for the budget. That was $225 million. So it's up to the provinces have the flexibility to manage the programs as they see fit. I can give you a few examples, but it can vary from one province to the other. Innovation side, technology transfer, marketing, demonstration, or developing new agri-food products. On the market development side, how can we differentiate Canadian products, access to local markets, providing information about the market? So these programs vary tremendously from one province to the next. Each province can develop programs that meet its needs. This $18 million transferred to which province? To all of the provinces. Fairly? We have a formula. We have a Quebec formula that was established a few years ago that enables us to distribute this money amongst the provinces. And we'll use the same formula for our new program. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Something that I wanted to bring up earlier was and that we've looked at committee in the last Parliament, and we've looked at this in the last 2 years at a few times. It's PACA. When we talk about our relationship with the United States and NAFTA, United States and Mexico, when we meet with the horticultural sector, they remind us that during the election campaign we had all promised, I think all three parties, to bring in PACA, payment protection for these people that export to the States. Now, as the Agriculture Committee, we've written to the Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of Innovation and Industry, Minister Baines, I think 3 times now. The last time that we wrote Minister Baines and we CC'd the Minister McCauley, and I wish I could have asked him this question. Didn't have time. We never received a response. I just wanted to check with our chair and the clerk. Did we receive a response from either minister? No. when you read the mandate minister that the Prime Minister wrote to the ministers, it enumerated quite a few things, and one of them is, to work closely with members of the opposition and the second party, collaborate with them, not to be partisan. And I think it's a shame that the Agriculture Committee has written 2 ministers on 3 different occasions. And it's PACA, I'm talking about PACA. So I heard that. There you go. And we didn't even get a response. We've done studies at committee. We've spent a lot of time listening to witnesses. Experts have worked really, really hard on presenting and briefing the Department of Agriculture, and now I think that they're working with the other ministry. It's very frustrating because we know how important this is. I don't think it would be really hard, and I don't understand where all the feet dragging is. I would have liked to have asked questions to the minister, but I was just wondering if Mr. Forbes or Mr. Corriveau, can you update us? Do you know, where this is at? Can you comment on PACA? Is there work being done between the 2 ministers' offices on this?
So, we certainly on issues like this, we do collaborate with colleagues. I can't comment on the specifics of a letter itself, but this issue, we're aware of it. We've heard from stakeholders about it, and as you say, we've had discussions with the private sector, with Innovation, Science, and Economic Development at it. So I think, other than saying, I can't personally comment on the letter, it's certainly an issue we're aware of, and we've done work on.
Okay, I'm 5 seconds. I look forward to getting the information about the dairy investment program back, and it's always a pleasure having you at committee. But also time, we never have enough time to get Thank you, Chair.
So thank you very much to both the Deputy Minister Forbes and Assistant Deputy Minister Corriveau for being with us today. We certainly appreciate you. So members, before we leave, we'd like to have motions on adopting the subcommittee, supplementary estimates B. So if you I'll go over every vote that we have to go over. So the number 1 is shall vote number 1B under Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food. Are we all in favor? We carry. Okay. Tout en faveur? We're all good on that one. Number 1.
Avec dissidence. I don't have a list.
Avec dissidence. Okay.
Avec dissidence.
Avec dissidence.
On division. On division.
Number 2, shall vote number 5B under Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food. All in favor? On division? On division. Madame Brosseau? Division. Madame Boucher?
On division.
Division, okay. Number 3, shall vote 10B under Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food. We're all in favor. On division, on division, on division. Shall the chair report votes number 1B, 5B, and 10B under Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food to the House? On division. And that is all, and I thank you, everyone, and the next meeting. Thank you so much.